So welcome.
Yeah.
And you're opposed and stating.
No, not at all. I'm just saying.
Okay, so can we election meeting be useful?
It was math lessons.
All right, that'll take way longer. Okay, so let's start with the opening karakia, please. Taka te hau ki te huru, taka te hau ki te tonga, kia maha ki te kina ki te, kia maha tata.
E hi ake ana te atakora, e teo, e hoka, e ho.
Tihe, Māori. Excellent. Okay, so apologies. We've got an apology from the Mayor for absence and the Deputy Mayor for late arrival, along with lateness from Councillor Templeton, Harrison Hunt and Donovan.
Was it a post-amendment party or something?
Yeah.
What have you been invited to?
The surgery.
And Andre's on Zoom. And is Tyler on Zoom yet?
Not yet. He's late this, but he'll come in via Zoom.
Okay. Cool. But I'll move these. Mel, you have a second. Yep. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, that's carried. We'll just note the declarations of interest. I'll move the previous minutes, 28th of May. Tim's happy to second anything on those. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, that's carried. David, there are no public forums, no deputations, no presentation of petitions, which brings us to Peter Ryan's report. I did see Peter. Great, thank you.
Just about the last one of the year, getting close anyway. It's still very steady, still quite positive. Just a brief run through because you've seen these numbers before. Levels of service going very well. They're at a high. Capital projects delivery to milestones not quite on track, but there is still time before the end of the year. Funding budgets allocated on track for 26. Still a little bit of room left for 27. So we'll have to see what the year end brings. Before I go on there was a conversation yesterday around this table on deliverability, and I got asked a question afterwards. So I just want to clarify something about these goals. When talking about capital, you can talk about spend, or what the Americans call burn rate, or the other goal here is outcomes, what's actually delivered on the ground on time. For a long time, we didn't have that, and so we used spend as a proxy. I just was asked the question, why are the two numbers different? And it's because they're different things. One is delivered to milestones, the other one is rate of spend. So one's at 93, one's at 83. I was asked what's the difference, and that's why they're actually different things. Both required in a conversation around deliverability. I just wanted to tease that apart because they're often used as the same thing when they're not. Value for money, as I explained earlier at the other meetings, we're fine overall. In fact, we're in surplus, but there are some individual activities that are over. That's a budgeting issue that's being looked at. It may not necessarily come right for those individual activities, but they're always unders and overs. Overall, though, we're in surplus. And that's really it. We finished the year. We looked at the year very close to a clean sweep, if not literally a clean sweep. Then near as damn it that it doesn't make any difference. So that's been a very positive year for us. I'm hoping those numbers land stable. Report for year end. Now, there's no questions from councillors from the last meeting. The level of service exceptions are there, and if I can answer them on the spot, I'm happy to. But if not, I'm happy to go back to the service and come back to you next month.
That's perfect. Thank you, Peter. That's really good. And obviously, just to note the second recommendation around the LTP, which you'll be working on.
Yes, we're bringing back a report to 23rd of July on the upcoming LTP implications or scenarios around landscaping. We don't literally know exactly what's being proposed.
Yeah.
So we're going to come back to you how it might work so that the thinking is warmed up when these things might come into play.
Yep. No, that's really good. Does anyone have any questions? No, well, I'm happy to move it.
Second it.
You have a second. Do you have a question? Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Just looking at like the crash rates, for example, just
35. Reduce the number of death and serious injury crashes on the local road network. I'm just wondering if we get a list of like the worst. I mean, I've raised this before, but like having a geospatial map of where the accidents are happening and the crashes would be quite useful to know where our spend is going. And I remember one time, actually, it was really good. The guys in the wastewater actually provided a map of the complaints that they were getting with the odor, and then a list of the project that were directly related to addressing where these complaints were coming from. So it's quite helpful to see where there's either gaps or actually that work is going on in the areas that are causing the targets to be failed.
Look, I'm sure we'll have a word in a moment, but yes, it's definitely possible to compile it now. I just want to revisit the purpose of this measure. It's a somewhat clumsy measure. It's one of the DIA mandatory ones, and what they're looking for from us as an outcome is that we investigate crashes and fatalities and so forth to determine if our infrastructure was a contributing factor. So the cheap way of looking at it is, a goal in which we understand who got hurt. The purpose of it is meant to trigger a post-mortem of our infrastructure. Was there any issue with our infrastructure that led to it, or was it simply human error? Because accidents do happen. So the map won't tease out the difference between an issue where our infrastructure may have been a factor versus someone just made a mistake. So the map will need to be not read at face value, is what I'm saying. Certainly possible to create, I'm sure. Is that a fair summary, Lynette?
This summary. It is a fair summary that I can't really add to too much, except that we've had a number of presentations, you've had a number of presentations over the past about how we deal with our safety program and how we prioritise it. So both at council and through community boards, and we have a number of mechanisms that we do that build off this crash data. So it's not just we also have a lag. So we have a lot of intersections in particular that have, we have a lag in being able to do things. I can get a memo back on that for you.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting to see. Like there's obviously 95 and 22, 108, 116, and then it's dropped down from 116 to 92. So, the trend would look like it's had a blip and maybe it's coming back down, but
that's why we use a 5-year. There's a couple of measures in there, and why we use a 5-year rolling average as well, because you can have a bad year, which is just a bad year.
Okay, cool. So that's been moved and seconded, and so you'll be able to get some information back.
Some information, but I can't promise through the chair. I can't promise it'll be a map, but I'll let you know what information we've got and what you can see.
Cool. All right. So that's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you, Peter. Yep. Very much. That's great. Bruce, do you want to come up and do the item number 8, financial performance report?
Morning, councillors. This finance report was a wee bit like Groundhog Day. It's been very consistent since December at least, reporting a good operational financial situation. It's just been a continuation, same issues, no new issues, the same drivers that are driving surplus. Surplus is forecast again to be a little bit better than it was at the end of May, up another 5.6 million. Partly the reason because I think finance are a little bit conservative in their forecasts. Unit managers don't tend to like to release too much ahead of time. We're working on that. The actual results obviously won't be known for probably another 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll be reporting those through to the August meeting, and any additional surplus, assuming there may be some, and that's unknown at this stage, we'll be reporting what to do with that at that point. Options will probably be contingencies potentially on the house road, or debt repayment would be the normal default, but council decision at that time. Capital running under budget, but I'll leave Nikki to talk to that in her report.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Yeah, I mean, it's probably worth just noting on the surplus. I know we've talked about it. Is you're right. We've already opted to use some to reduce the rate, some to pay down debt, but there are some unknowns that we need to get tidied up at year end. That's the driver for the difference. Yeah,
That's correct.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Any questions on this, Yanni?
Just two questions on page 63. This just follows on from previous, but just to be clear, in our draft annual plan, have we revised the forecast revenue for the Higley Park Botanic Gardens Park? Revised the forecast revenue based on now what we know with the Higley Park piece, given the significant discrepancy in what we thought we would get versus what we currently get.
So
Yes, we have. For next year, we'll have a pretty accurate model of that based on the modelling that's happened so far. So it won't be the 2.1, I think we'll model it down to around 800,000 next year.
Okay, and I think you've had media requests in the past, but although the parking revenue is down, you haven't seen an impact on the number of people going to the gardens or Higley Park.
No.
Cool. And just under that line, resource recovery MFE levy reduction. Are you able just to give us any information on that, what that is and why that's down?
So
Okay.
we'll just come back on that. Yep. Cool. Kelly.
Thanks, Bruce. Just also on page 63, the debt servicing. So am I right to say that we our annual budget is 148 million, which I'm assuming is just paying interest?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, so
Gross amount.
favourable interest rates are going to see a forecast period of 8 million positive. What do we do with that?
So what do we do with it?
Yeah, it just goes into the.
It comes into that surplus.
Oh, okay.
And then we kind of go, yeah, do we want to debt offset rates or keep it for the weather event? Yeah.
Part of the policy.
Thank you.
Trader, there's two lines there. There's the interest cost. There's also the interest revenue. I think revenue's under budget, interest cost is under budget. So there's a net.
Yeah.
Slightly less than the gross difference. Yep.
Cool.
That's correct. There's a net gain in terms of the interest cost overall.
Awesome. All right. So I'm voting this. Jake looks like he's happy to second it. Very, very happy. So we'll put that to the vote. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, that's carried. Thanks very much, Bruce. That's great. Okay, and Nikki, do you want to come up and do the capital and Paul? Yep.
Okay, Tom. So, as we head into the final month of the financial year, we want to briefly outline where we're sitting across the capital program, explain the PMO's confidence in our forecast, and hand over to Paul to walk through the evidence base in more detail for you all. So year to date, we've now delivered 584.8 million, so we're up 58.3 million from April. They landed at 101 of the forecast, up from 95% in April. Stronger alignment between planning and delivery is shown by that. For the CCC capital program, excluding the stadium, we've now spent 411.7 million. The project manager forecast for year end has actually dropped slightly from, to 462 million, 84% down from 471.8 million. That's 86% in April. In contrast, the PMO forecast remains at 500 million. That's a $38 million difference, and we'll walk through why we believe our number holds strong. The PMO have done the work. There are two completely separate forecast methodologies that have been used to test our position. Paul will speak through those. So regarding the June pattern, this is not a one-off. Both FY 23 and FY 24, June was under forecasted by 30 to 45 million. We're seeing that same risk again this year. Why? Final invoices land late, labour and overheads capitalised in arrears, accruals and asset capitalisation have often missed PM forecasting. In short, PMs are forecasting what they can see. So we've worked with finance and delivery leads to itemise the difference, where the differences sit. Three Waters likely uplift at 10 million in June accruals. Transport forecast is light by 10 to 15 million, especially in the access works. Parks and internal PM time consistently undercounted at this point in the year. The land transactions will hit in June. So the PMO just hasn't held its position. We've backed it with intervention. Realism checks on high value projects based on phase. One-on-one reviews with key delivery teams. Our forecast alignment tool is being designed, so we manually do this. We're designing a tool for this. And we've got targeted community practices that have gone out to all of the PMs and team leaders, program managers. There's been 4 in total. So I'll pass over to Paul to go through this in more detail for you, and we can answer your questions.
Thanks. I just wanted to run through some of the methodology of how we get the PMO forecast and why it's so different to the PM forecast. So I'm just working through from the agenda, page 102 down is where I'm starting from. So the PMO sort of works from a top-down position rather than bottom-up. So the PM's forecast that we're reporting is every project added up, basically. So it's every 1,100 projects, add them all up, that's our forecast from a PM point of view. We then look from top-down and look at history, trends, other things, and then decide what we think the number will be. So they're quite a different methodology in how we go about it. And just some of the analysis is sitting there from page 102. So one analysis we do is, if we know what we do each quarter, how can we use that to predict our future position? If you look at the data there, the quarterly spend is eerily consistent year on year on year. So if we know what roughly where we're at in terms of a quarter, and then we can extrapolate that out, that's one method. If we use that methodology, we get to about 513 as a predicted number. We also then looked at the methodology that we talked about in the deliverability workshop, where if we know where projects start in a year, what sort of spend do they have based on what phase they're in at the beginning of the year. So if they're in construction, we know they're going to spend a lot of money. If they're in concept or some early stages, we know they're less likely to spend money. So based on that information, it's the same as what we presented at the deliverability. If we use that now to predict, we get same 513 number. So we still think that's a little bit on the high side, given where we're at. We still think we're going to come in somewhere around 490 to 500 in terms of total spend for the year. So somewhere around that 490, 500 is where we think. The other reasons why we think it's a little bit light on some of those later graphs is when you look at the historical spend by month, June is always a traditionally very high month, largely because we end up with accounting rules that require accruals into June. So we end up with what we often refer to as a double month. So most of the time, what we're reporting is cash position. So the May claim or the May invoices end up actually in the June in terms of payment and when they get processed through the system. But in June, we have to bring June back in. Ordinarily, that would sit in July. So we end up with a very strong month in June, really because it's May and June's invoicing. And so that's why. And when you look at some of the graphs historically versus now, the forecast in June is at a similar level to what it has been in other months of the current year. So that it's not indicating that we've got a double month. There's some examples in there. I won't run through them all. If there's questions, let me know. We've also done some analysis on some of the projects at the moment where they sit. We've already got 237 projects to date that have already spent more than their forecast for the year. So that value is about 8.3 million. So there's 8.3 million that they've already spent more than they were forecasting. So yeah, that's another reason we think it's going to come in a bit higher. So that's 8 million of it, of what we think will be higher, where the forecast is already
undercooked in terms of what they've actually spent. Yeah. So happy to answer any more questions, but that's the sort of the overview of how we go about it and why they're often quite different.
That's really useful. Thanks for that. I guess if we can going forward reflect that in the report, so that because anyone reading it would go, hang on, there's a difference. Well, why is that? And it's the two things. I guess the question, then I'll go to Tyrone, is how do we, in terms of the project manager's forecast? So are we saying that they don't forecast the double up in June? Is that effectively where it's got?
Some do and some don't. That's a bit of a problem. Yeah, and so that's part of what Nikki was referring to. We're doing sort of workshops with team leaders and PMs around forecasting. So we've done 4 to date to try and talk about some of the issues around forecasting, what's used, and try and iron out some of these issues. Yeah.
So who does that responsibility sit with? Is it the head of service or?
Technically, yes.
Yeah. So what are we doing in that respect? Because it just seems, the heads of service are all very competent.
And that's why we're working with team leaders as well. Yeah. So the team leaders of the PMs that most of them will report straight to the head of, is trying to work with them on how they can help and support. Because a lot of it's just about being critical and asking the questions of where projects are at, because it's really making sure that there's a reasonably accurate prediction of when the project will hit construction. Yeah. Once you've got that nailed, then rarely it should be pretty easy to forecast. But it's that front end, but if we don't get that start date for construction right, then it all starts compounding and falling over in terms of total position.
We're also doing internal health checks. So when projects are live and when projects are finished, against all the PM competencies to ensure that we're giving that professional advice to the team leaders and supporting them with training as well.
Yeah, I guess B could be something can you take away is if the responsibility sits with the heads of service, then it would be good to understand some of double counting or not counting June. Yeah. That it just seems we should be able to get that more accurate.
Yeah, and that noted.
Yeah.
Noted, yeah.
Cool. Tyrone, thank you.
I really appreciate the explanation today. Like I can understand the difficulties that you're facing. So, 2 different numbers, but so as I understand it, like what we're saying, where you get that forecast of 462, like when you're building it from the bottom up, that's like the limitations of all that data feeding through into Power BI, and you don't really have the mechanism to override that detail and forecast. So you're basically saying, well, we know all this other stuff that's impossible to kind of put together and push through the data. It's kind of quite hard to do that, right? Yes. So therefore, you've got to kind of take this other stuff and come up with 500. Is that about that? That would be sort of a really
very
poorly described layman's view
of how it works. Yes,
no. So
we don't want to adjust their forecasts because they own the forecast, not.
Totally get it, yeah. But you're working with them to
try and start getting them better aligned.
It's absolutely crystal clear, and I do appreciate the work that's going on. It's very clear to see. Thank you.
Cool, you're good?
Yep.
Victoria.
Thank you very much. Like Tyrone, I really appreciate this tutorial for us. It really helps us with our governance. In terms of the phases of a project and all of the aspects that feed into our deliverability and our spend, is my understanding correct that it's the planning phase that is one of the biggest determiners of the time? If you get held up in that, it will not only slow you down, but prevent you spending.
It's probably 3 big phases. Planning is one of them. Consenting, if that's applicable.
Okay, so I included consenting
and planning. Yeah. And the other one is around just getting through the procurement process and making sure that goes smoothly.
Okay, so I hadn't appreciated the procurement part of it. And so do we report on those 2 parts individually at our level?
No, we don't. Well, we often aggregate them to try and reduce the volume of information, but we do have the detail underneath it, yes.
And I think I've read somewhere that we're ahead of the curveball in terms of some of our planning and consents with the projects that we've got in the pipeline. So that should be giving us confidence that we will get to where we're tracking. And is that different to how we've tracked previously? Are you seeing an improvement, I suppose, is where I'm trying to get to with my question.
Yeah, and that's the data you're talking about, Peter reported earlier. Yes, the planning targets. Yeah, so effectively that's just trying to get keep that pipeline live. Through the planning, and what we mean is all the planning is decide what programs and what projects are going to fall out of those programs. What's the prioritization of those projects? Yes, so that's all part of it. It is getting a little bit better, but we've been quite high in the last couple of years, which has helped fueling a better overall delivery.
So what do you mean quite high and related to what?
We delivered 500 last year. Effectively, and that was because of some of the work that we've done the 2 years before that, really. And that's the real difficulty with a lot of the capital is there's quite a long front end to get the projects, understand what the projects are, get them scoped up, and then assign them to someone to actually deliver.
So the takeaway that I'm getting from you today is that we are getting better at that.
Yes.
Thank you. Excellent.
Right, I've got Mark, and then we'll Mel's happy to second this. No.
Just looking on page 67 under 3.4.2. The nemesis of Q-Rail is mentioned there as one of the potential holdups. I'm really keen, and I'm sure a number of other councils are also very keen to try and get rid of them. If there's any way that as organisation and government we can help to try and get this.
We'll have to come back about reporting, thinking about reporting for the next triennium and how we do that, because we're working closely with Kiwirail as usual, and we've reported that regularly. But they are their own organisation, they have their own resourcing constraints and other issues at a national level. So we'll have to have a think about that.
Certainly, we were seeing it yesterday in the annual plan discussions, there was a fair bit of discussion around Kiwirail and implications on our budgets. And if we can try and de-risk some of that, that would be really useful as a way as government we can help to.
Can I suggest through the chair that we that memo about Kiwirail for ARMC is still coming. I apologise it has taken longer than but it is due with you in the next month or so. So we'll try and add some of that into this.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I've got Yanni, then we're gonna.
Yanni,
and then.
I just wanted to see your face. You look so disappointed.
Okay, Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Just in terms of the activated sludge plant. Sorry, this is page 85. So it's good news. Things are tracking on schedule, which is good, and I understand that we're still looking at a contract being signed at the end of August. So that's the kind of time frame. But the owner issues are persisting. And you know, I know when we agreed to it, we were going to try and do it quicker if we could. I'm just really keen to know if there's anything else we can do to get the work happening quicker than we currently have it in terms of the time frame. Because waiting to
Kevin's not here, is he?
No, we haven't talked about
29, you know, it's still
So
a lot of time.
are we happy to can we take that question and come back? Yeah,
Cool.
and can we circulate that to all council? Yeah.
I think that would be good.
Yeah, cool.
I just wanted to draw your attention to Perry Corley. Sorry, I'll just flick through to the page number. Cool. So page 101, which you know, I have to say I really like these watch list sheets. I think you're doing a really good job at giving us information in a way that's easy to understand. But what I'm concerned about is, like, if you looked at this page in isolation of knowing anything about this project, it looks like it's all green flags, and yet this is probably one of the, be careful, but one of the most appalling projects that we've had.
Well, not being careful, this,
in terms of the length of time taken, the budget, like the whole, everything associated with it has been problematic. And yet the context of which it's presented shows it as being really good, like green. So I'm just wondering, like, I know these get reset every financial year, right? So basically It's just that it kind of doesn't capture the context.
It's
of-
not
of
negative
what-
enough.
I was just about to say, it hasn't captured the right.
Yeah.
So,
It's a current state.
It's nearly finished.
right, okay, so, so is there anything more that we know about what's happening with Perikirori around meeting its current milestones? We've obviously had some briefings, in the last couple of months about things that have been going on. And that, I mean, you know, I think there's been concern. So how confident are you that the project is on track to meet these targets?
Everything we're seeing at the moment would suggest that it is definitely on track to be able to open on the dates recorded here.
Okay, so no issue of concern, any further delays?
Not that we're aware of, no.
And no further cost to council. That's good to hear. And I just wanted to support the call for a governance to governance meeting with KiwiRail. So I think,
Yeah, so we've been there, so we've got something different. Mark's already covered that and we've agreed on an action, so. If you,
well, yeah, I just wanted to know though, in terms of you as chair, obviously the minister came down and did a photo op on Scotland's Road with the mayor. So I'm just wondering if there's, like, the staff are gonna do their engagement. But like, is there any way that we could actually meet as a council with the minister to talk
I
about it?
think let's get the advice back from the team first. And then we can work out the best approach. But I agree, we need a coordinated approach to get the best results out of KiwiRail.
And Pages Road was the other one, that if we were approaching government, I do wonder whether we need to talk through. In this report, it's flagging that Pages Road, the costs are likely to increase again. And it's red, and I know we've got good news that we've had the first stage of the business case approved. But again, it's one I wonder whether if we're talking with central government, if there's a way in which we can have constructive conversations about progressing it.
So through the chair, can I just correct an incorrection there? The business case has not been approved.
Sorry.
The business case has been submitted
Oh, yeah, sorry.
and the business case is due to go to the board.
Yes.
We've got through the first stage of the approvals process, which is an internal process, and it's due to go to the board in August. So we're waiting for that approval. Through the development of that business case, and because with the NZTA we are asking for, they call construction implementation. But they have a pre-implementation phase, which is your design, your consenting, all of that stuff. It's our detailed design phase. And usually in a project this big, you would get your pre-implementation funding and then you would go back and confirm and get your construction or implementation funding. So you would do a two-stage process to get approvals. We're going to the board asking upfront for all of it upfront. And because of that, we've built in a little bit of extra contingency. We won't know what the actual costs are until we work through this process, and we are being as upfront with you as we can. We've built in the extra contingency in the funding requests to NZTA, so that they know how that sits and where it is, and we've reflected that in our reporting as well.
So the
I need to keep this, so I think we've done that one to death. You're gonna come back. I've got Tim and then I've got Celeste.
Can I just very quick clarification, just the figure 93 million, that's the new, is that the recently revised cost estimate?
That's the figure that we've put into the NZTA business request. NZTA business case.
Great, thank you for clarifying.
Thanks, Yanni. Tim and then Celeste and then we'll.
Thank you. Just with regard to Perikirori, Andrew, I just want to acknowledge Nigel and the team. It's a big takeover. Yeah, it's a big operation. So what they're doing is quite amazing. But it is the big thing here is we don't know what we don't know. So it'd be really good just that we've got an estimate of what we think it's going to cost to run it. And if we can just keep an eye on that, it'd be really good. Any kind of curveballs that come to us, 'cause, yeah, bulls are lost leaders in a sense. So thank you.
Cool, thank you. Celeste?
Thank you for the explanation. It's helpful. I'm not sure if you can, don't if it's not useful, but is a contingency normally about 10%? Or is that best not?
Contingency would be set differently at different phases of a project.
Yeah, and just a quick other one, and part of what's been put in through the business case, that's the bridge and the ancillary, the two roads on either side.
Is that bridge and the approaches? Yes.
Yeah. So at what point do we get an update on the rest of the project and where that sits? Is that after the business case comes back? We see where the other bits. And if we wanted to progress parts of those that were able to be progressed ahead of the other project, we could look at that then. So if we're looking at bringing forward elements of that project, if there was an opportunity to do so that fell outside the approaches in the bridge, could we do that once we get advice back?
Yeah, we'd need to come back to council on that and we have a conversation about that. But it would be after the business case. We'd be talking September, October. Guess what's happening around that time. But it is about September, October before we would be clear on what we've got approved. They, just to be clear though, through the chair, the approval for NZTA is for the bridge and the approaches and the changes to the priority of intersections required to make the whole bridge and change the intersection function, but it's not for the street renewals.
Okay, thank you. Tyler, you're the final question, man.
Yeah, this might not be the right item to ask it in, but it's around connectivity.
Maybe we could get an update from Nigel at the right time. Yeah, probably not on the capital, but we can get you an update. Yeah. Cool, so that's been moved and seconded. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried.
Melanie, what have you
Thank you, sir.
popular?
Okay, Luke, do you want to come up for your item 10, your procurement at council?
Yeah. I was just saying, could you tell me what you did? Because obviously.
It's okay. Good morning.
It's enough.
So just a bit of background on this one. ACOM and Deloitte did a couple of reports on Wellington Water's activity around the use of their panels and engagement of consultants and contractors. Following that, I brought a paper to Audit and Risk Management Committee to talk through how our processes contrast with that. Following that, Audit and Risk asked if I could come along here and just present this report that covers off the entire procurement cycle across the entirety of council. So that's pretty much it. Thank you. That's a really useful report. I found it really valuable and good to be that front facing so that people can understand our procurement process and I guess how it's not like that. Yeah, which was kind of the objective. So does anyone have any questions on this? Yanni?
Just just was kind of thinking about the way in which the big companies tend to dominate in the market on a number of things and looking at the changes that we've made to go to more local, smaller firms for, I think it's project management around water.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So I was just really interested if there was any reflection on that type of approach being rolled out in other things that we do in terms of procurement. So looking to use more local, small boutique companies rather than very large multinationals, etc.
Well, in short, that's always considered every time, pretty much. And it depends on what type of outcome we're after. With that design one, that was a small part of a wider scope that's multidisciplinary. That's probably is still best suited to the larger companies when you want to do an end-to-end design. But we ring-fenced off that contract management portion, which is only a subset, and hopefully we'll gather up some smaller things that way.
So things like legal, for example, I know in the past we've tended to use one or two big, we tend to have quite large contracts or large expenditure with one or two big legal firms.
Yeah.
Are we looking to kind of look at using more local, smaller firms and looking at the comparison between value for money versus, and I guess just,
The firms on our panel have Christchurch-based offices. And when we go out to the market, we try and make it as wide as possible to enable the small and medium-sized firms to come in as well. And there is some work that goes out to those smaller firms. As much as anything, it's the nature of the work that we do requires or lends itself to firms of a much bigger size, just the sheer volume of work and what we do. But we always, when we go out for our legal panel, we do very much try to encourage the Christchurch only small, medium-sized firms to find something in our
in our requirements that they can supply.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, appreciate the report.
And then Kelly, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, but just wondering in terms of once the contract has been fulfilled, do we rate the contractors on a number of scales on value for money, speed of doing the job, etc. And is that available? I imagine it's commercially sensitive, but
yeah, so it's something that we're working on. There's a rating scale that I use called the PACE rating scale. That's something that we're trying to implement a bit more consistently across all the different activities we do. Yeah, so there is a facility to do that, and we are working on trying to gather all that information and make it a bit more consistent about how everyone's doing. It is something that's quite objective and balanced and cuts across all the different types of parameters that we're all interested in. So yeah, it's something that we're working on.
because I'm sure you would have subjective thoughts about different contractors and what they can do and can't do. Is it the sort of thing that we would be exposed to, or the procurement sort of a subgroup of council, I guess?
Yeah, so it broadly falls under the concept of track record, which is something that we almost always look at, certainly in an open market tender, and certainly if it's funded by NZTA, because it's one of their mandatory, well, not mandatory considerations, one of the key considerations that they have. So it is something that we look at. What you were talking about is how we measure it, but irrespective of that, we still ask them to evidence their performance in the contracts and examples that they provide. So it's still looked at and considered and scored in any open market tender. Does that cover off?
Pretty much, yeah. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Yanni, you're happy to second. Great. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much, Luke. Really good report. Okay, Linda will be. Oh, there, Linda's there. Great. Do you want to talk us through the Te Kaha one, and then we'll go on to VO? Oh.
The best thing I'd like to say is that I've been up and called it Te Kaha project development when it's actually project development.
Don't worry, it got through agenda setting as well. I noticed it yesterday, so don't worry.
Early was out to lunch that day. It's straightforward, we're on track in terms of the performance targets for the governance of the construction of the stadium.
Yeah, I mean, this is pro forma, pretty standard, so I'm happy to move it. Tyler, you happy to second? All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Okay, thank you all. So we'll get VO and.
They are
Yeah.
here. Just coming there.
You straight into it, Carolyn?
Straight
Welcome. We'll hand over to you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Dan and councillors. I'll just stand for a couple of seconds of it. Well, thanks very much for giving us time to come along and present Q3 report. This is about Q3 Otautahi performance. Inevitably, we'll mention a couple of things about gearing up for the stadium in the future. But we've had that opportunity to talk, so we don't want to sort of spend a lot of time on that. This is about the performance for the last quarter. So I'm going to hand over to Caroline and Danny, and they'll take us through that.
Oh, thanks, Gil. Now, good to see you all. New session. All right, look, today we're going to talk a little bit about Q3 and year to date. And given we're already at the end of June, which is a bit scary, we'll probably just talk a little bit about where we might end up for year end as well. And as we said at our last session, we'll also touch a little bit on commercial and operational preparedness for One New Zealand Stadium at Te Kaha. But generally Q3 has been a really positive quarter, and year to date we're tracking along really well. Okay. So you'll see there to the end of March we've welcomed over 480,000 guests. And we're on track for the year end to welcome 670,000 guests, which is 170,000 more than we had forecast, which is awesome. On track to deliver over 400 events versus the 393 that we have. And you'll see there a really good split of event type. So making sure that all of the venues are being highly utilised, but they're being utilised with a good diverse range of them. And you'll see there 16 major events delivered to the end of Q3 and forecasted to deliver 21, which is 5 more than again we had forecast. So all tracking really, really well. Some of the event highlights, again, it seems like going back a lifetime, but again, you'll see a really good diverse range, great utilisation of the town hall continues, and a couple of those highlights were Brian Adams, we've all been there. First one sold out faster than any show post-COVID, and then we had 2 shows there, which were just awesome, and again, great content at the Oval, town hall, really highly utilised, so all tracking along beautifully. With our wonderful set of venues. Thank you. Again, celebrate and source local remains at the heart of everything that we do. Whilst that 78% is slightly under the 80, we are on track to continue that 80% mark by the end of the year. That's all just a little bit down to seasonal produce. And again, 70% just under of all of our contractors and suppliers coming from Canterbury. And you'll see there 30% catering cost of goods sold. So before we bought catering in-house, our cost of goods were 40%. So really good to see that number, as well as accounting for the fact that, you know, we've seen 30% uplift in the cost of butter, 30% uplift in the cost of beef, similar for flour. So all of those main material items have continued to markedly increase, but we are maintaining those good costs. So again, positive. Economic impact. So we look at economic impact on a couple of those factors. So one is through the estimated contribution through visitor spending. So at the end of 28 million, sorry, is 18 million. 8.5 is what we spend direct with local suppliers, and 1.2 year to date for local food. Looking at the end of the year, in totality, that will be around 40 million. So again, wonderful to see how much the events and the venues contribute more broadly to the wider ecosystem. Social impact, so social and environmental impact, as well as financial sustainability, all form part of our entire kind of impact framework. And you'll see there some wonderful uplifts from Q2. So 34 staff trained and recruited, new staff. Our employee engagement score is still high at 78%, and our staff turnover is down to 7%, industry standards around 25. So really good to see that, you know, our team are happy in their work and obviously feel really connected to the work that Venues Ōtautahi do for the city. And equally important, environment. So all of those reductions there are versus our 2023 baseline. So you'll see across all of those categories there, we're seeing material decreases. So electricity usage, stationary fuels, transport fuels, and waste. Now waste is obviously one of the more visible, but it contributes about 0.6% of our entire carbon footprint. So some of those others are more material. And in terms of our fuel, so stationary fuel, we have started work on the replacement of our diesel boilers, which contribute 39% to our total carbon emissions. They'll be done in the next 18 months. We just have to wait for a big window for the arena to be available. And community access and connection to the venues remains a critical part of what we do. So again, we're well on track to exceed our targets for the year. So 42 community events with a discounted rate delivered to date to the end of March. So that annual target well on track to be exceeded. And again, we've already exceeded the 100 grams worth of community discount. Another positive story around our client and guest experience NPS scores. So again, tracking well ahead and providing a really good platform, particularly around that guest NPS. You want to get that, keep that moving positively, but all tracking well ahead of where they should be. Financial performance targets, so we're going to end the year again well ahead of where we thought we would. So our operating income to the end of the third quarter, we've got a $737,000 positive variance to budget. Our EBITDA is 1.5 million ahead of budget, and our costs are 1 million down. So all of those things are really about both our commercial partnerships and some of the new commercial partnerships that we've engaged in over the last 3 quarters, as well as that stringent cost control and being a bit more clever about some of the things that we're doing internally. We've also seen a bit of a downshift in utilities and a little bit less insurance. We haven't seen those market increases that we have seen over the while, but noting we do have those other uplifts in terms of food costs and all those other things that we are managing, as well as the living wages. And obviously continuing to meet those pre-opening costs for the stadium. So a bit of an update on where things are at with our commercial and operational readiness. You would have seen we've been out in the market selling premium hospitality, which has gone really, really well. So we're already ahead of the assumptions for next year, which has been great. We won't talk all of the specifics at the moment. We're still working through all the contractual arrangements for premium hospitality, but as I say, we are well ahead from phase 1, and we've still got phase 2 to go. Operational readiness continues. You might have seen that we're out in the market recruiting for casual roles. As of today, we've had 850 applicants, which is awesome. So what we're going to do, actually, we do need staff with skills already established so they can hit the ground running, but we also want to provide training and development opportunities for people in our community. So we are going to create more of a VO academy to start bringing some of those potential members of the team that just need a little bit more support and development. So we're going to have that 2-tiered approach to make sure that we don't have too many of those 850 disappointed, and we can provide those opportunities that we want to. Event attraction, we talked about at our session back in May. We don't have anything more to update on that, other than we are in some heavy and intensive commercial discussions around some of those launch events, and we'll be able to talk more about that in the coming months. Looking forward, it might be a hurry up. So just looking forward to the remainder of the year. Sorry. We're nearly there, obviously. So wonderful result for the Crusaders on Saturday night, and for Venues Ototahi having 3 finals matches was also a positive. And you'll see they're continuing to deliver a wonderful diverse range of events across the venues, and for the town hall to finish on 67 events for the last quarter, again, just a stunning use of that beautiful place. So that is us. Oh, we can go to this last slide now. So any questions?
Great, Scott. Thank you very much for that. It's really, really useful, and a good update on where things are at. I really like that idea of the VO Academy in terms of, because I was thinking that's one of those citywide benefits where there might be people that get trained in hospitality that, while they're working for you, might move on to somewhere else and help as well. So that's really cool. Thank you. Aaron and then Yanni.
Yeah, this was great for other companies to poach good staff. So 2 questions. One is on things like when beef goes up dramatically. Do you change the menu because lamb's at an all-time kind of bargain price? I'm going to call it cheap because that's disrespectful, but it's a great price. So do you switch the menu to suit?
Well, look, we do have to flex. Where we start is, can we get a better deal somewhere else? And we've actually, with beef, we've managed to secure about a 50% reduction started in the last couple of weeks. So, we've got to be clever about how we first look at all suppliers and supplier arrangements, and then look at shifting our menus accordingly. Yeah.
That's not small.
I know.
Yeah, no, that's great. But and then but beef is very high. And then the other one is around opening date of Te Kaha. And
any chance you can be earlier? I know we're in public, but ACDC have announced playing, I think, Supercars weekend in Adelaide. Because ACDC currently touring America. I mean, they're still alive.
Yes.
The bonus. And Super Bogan weekend in Christchurch will go off. You know, I think the South Island.
You asked a question.
Any chance we could make that happen?
Opening early is not really a question for me, unfortunately. That's a question for the project. Obviously, the earlier the better from our perspective and for the city. And if that were the case, yeah, that would certainly be a conversation we'd have.
Yeah, and I've talked to the promoter TNG about ACDC specifically, and I won't say the number, but it is eye-watering what it would cost to get that particular production.
Have you seen the cars those guys drive?
No, absolutely, yeah. Business is good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yanni?
Yeah, yeah, first of all, I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you've done on the temporary, what was supposed to be a very temporary stadium that has lasted a lot longer than anyone would have imagined. So that's obviously the Apollo Stadium. And, you know, thank you for the work that you've done in that space. I know it's been a long journey and it's been held together by, you know, staff who have done an incredible job at giving people the best experience they can have in a temporary facility that was never built to last as long as it has. So the question is, looking forward, is there a process around winding that stadium up, and what does that look like in terms of the future?
I think that might be an Andrew question. Yeah.
Okay, so that's all.
Come back, it will come back to you.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So I'm happy to move this. Victoria looks like she's happy to second it. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you all very much for coming in. Much appreciated. Okay, Tim, you're in the hot seat for CCHL.
Just wanted to use that. I've been wanting to use that for the last few days. It's so responsible, but you know. Well, welcome to CCH at the table. Thank you very much. So today we have Brian Pearson, the chair, Paula Davies, the financial manager, and Alice Johnson, the portfolio manager. No.
Alana Kidd.
Right. Sorry for that. And thank you all and welcome. We'll take the item as read and yeah, oh, hold on.
I'm just checking we have enough people.
Sorry.
We were just checking numbers, but.
No, we're well shy.
What makes us quorate? Is it half plus one?
We're here.
I know, we're all right,
One, guys. We do have two online, so we do have a quorum. Thank you.
Is the.
True, yeah. I've got so many. So Brian, sorry, and we are in your hands.
Thank you. Paula, Alana and I are pleased to present the Q3 update for CCHL. And we just apologise for Matt, who's attending a New Zealand Infrastructure Commission symposium at the Beehive today. So we thought it was really important for Matt and for Christchurch to be there. And so Matt has handed off to us to update you today. So without Matt here, we'll do our very best, but questions that we feel that we can't answer and we're best to refer to Matt, then we will. The group financial targets are tracking to the SOI targets or better, and 89% of all the subsidiary SOI targets are on track, which is good news. It is regrettable that our group health and safety SOI zero serious harm incidents target will not be achieved as a result of the previously reported serious injury at LPC on the 29th of March. That remains subject to an internal ICAM investigation and a Maritime New Zealand investigation. So both of those investigations are continuing. Very close, staying very close to LPC in support of their ongoing programs and enhance the safety culture and improve performance at the court. So I just want to reassure you that a lot of the CCHL time has been spent remaining deeply connected to and remaining close to and across what they're doing with their transformation program, which has very much got an improvement in the safety culture at its heart. Let's hand over to Paula to talk through some financials. We've got a bit of ourselves. There we go.
Thanks, Ben. So just around financial performance at the Q3 year to date. So the group performance, it's really a continuation of the previously reported interim results, which did show solid results when compared to last year as well. The group's tracking well towards those full year targets in our FY25 SOI, and also on track to pay that our final dividend to council for the end of the month also. Just the second table on the slide highlights the subsidiaries tracking at Q3 towards that full year target. Just probably a bit of cautious nature of the uncertainty around the airport there. That's just related to the depreciation changes we saw last year around tax on buildings. So that'll be worked through as well as part of year-end processes. So almost at the end of June, so we'll be kicking into those year-end processes and look forward to presenting the full year results in a few months' time as well.
And you're going to send across a dividend payment?
Yeah.
Which is as per the SOI target, final dividend. So that comes across next week.
That'll be, yeah, before the end.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. So just moving to the non-financial, a couple of non-financial highlights. Following a process of board effectiveness surveys and assessment of director performance, we're going to be recommending to you the reappointment of 11 current directors, of which 10 are eligible per council policy for reappointment. So that paper will be coming to you soon. One of the 11 is outside of policy for extenuating circumstances, and we'll address that in the paper. But I think you'll appreciate when you understand those extenuating circumstances while we're making that recommendation with just one director who's we're recommending be appointed outside of the policy of 6 years. We also have 3 new CCHL subsidiary director vacancies, which includes the chair of City Care, and those are currently being advertised. And we've got 2 Christchurch New Zealand vacancies, so 5 vacancies in total, for an appointment recommendation to come through to council on the 10th of September. So everything is on track there. The 3 director vacancies in the subsidiaries are the City Care Chair, a director at Eco Central, and a director at Enable. We're also pleased to report that the Associate Director program has been reset and it will be launched later this year. All the subsidiaries, Christchurch New Zealand and Venues Otatahi are going to participate, and appointments will be effective from the 1st of February next year for 18 months. And just to remind you, the objective of the AD program is to improve governance capability in Christchurch and grow the bench strength of future directors for the group.
Yeah, sure. So further to that, as part of the impact program, we have quite a bit of activity in our diversity, equity, inclusion program. That includes a repeat of our assessment of gender diversity and of the gender pay gap across the group. That will be finished by July. There's also a number of activities kind of going on underneath that to improve those numbers on a year by year manner. One of those is Te Puna Manawa, which is our Women in Leadership program, which will continue again this year after some really great feedback last year.
Next presentation.
Right. Nui is our Māori Partnerships Pathways program that has undergone a bit of a refresh in preparation for the next financial year. And all the subsidiary businesses are working on, as we've presented to you before, on decarbonisation initiatives. We've presented to council previously and showed the emissions reduction plan tool that we use to model the carbon impact of decisions and timing of capital investment and so on. So that work is continuing. LPC has secured government funding for 2 of their decarbonisation projects, which is really great to see, because that funding has significantly reduced. And the Sustainability Working Group, which is the sustainability teams across the subsidiaries, are all working currently on climate-related disclosures. These kind of mirror the New Zealand climate standards so that they can be submitted through to CCHL for our own climate-related disclosure, which comes out at the end of October.
So just to wrap up, the year overall is playing out very well. There's still lots to do and work on as we approach year end and move into FY26. And we appreciate the opportunity to just give you that small presentation in support of the report that you've received.
Thank you all very much. Just before I take questions, I'm presuming that with the incidents in LPC, that they cannot be, that if they are under investigation, there'll be no questions about that. Is that would be correct?
Yeah, we're not in a position to be able to elaborate on that at this stage, but when we can, we will.
Thank you. So I hope you take that on board, councillors. And any questions?
Yeah, thank you. And just a quick question on the intern or associate director program. It's a great program, so congratulations with that. Just wondering if you have any internal KPIs or monitoring of, I guess, a conversion rate of those interns / associate directors into fully fledged directors later on. Is there sort of a thought process or a pathway around that?
Yeah, we're resetting the whole program, and there needs to be some KPIs set around that too. And I think it's a point well made, because we do need to track whether or not we are actually achieving the objective, which is to improve governance capability in Christchurch, but also to build the bench strength and to transition associate directors in time into director roles within the group. We have recently made some appointments. The most recent one was Sina Cotter-Tate, who was an associate director at Eco Central 7 years ago. Sina's been appointed to the CCHL board. So that's one example of a associate director coming through the program and ending up into a fully fledged director. We will look to track things and to provide some KPIs around that.
I actually think we have some others amongst the subs as well, but it's kind of anecdotal.
It is.
Hey, it's nice that happened. But yeah, thanks for the answer.
Thank you. Sarah, you're up next.
Kia ora, thanks so much for the report there. Listen, I've just there's a lot of murmurings out in the community at the moment, and disquiet around the port especially. And I'm wondering, there's if you could provide some reassurance for people on that one. I know at the AGM last year, you reassured people that there was nothing going on by way of sort of deliberate moves for sales, those kind of things. And I'm just wondering if you can give us some reassurance around that one at the moment.
Yeah, it's quite frustrating, the extent to which there remains sort of rumour around the port about possible sale of the port, contracting out of the port's operations. As chair of CCHL and in my tenure on the board, the board has had no contact with DP World, which seems to be the organisation that keeps getting raised as someone who the CCHL as the shareholder and the company are engaging with. I know the company engaged with DP World. That's prudent that they do that because they do bring a lot of knowledge and intelligence to the table that DP World, that the port can use in understanding their sector and developing their strategies. There is the port recently released a expressions of interest document, which is a very early stage piece of work in relation to the city depot and the inland port. And they are scoping out and wanting to understand what their options look like around that. One of which might be to consider some contracting out in the inland port and the city depot. One of the options might be. We've made it very clear, and the port understands that if there were to be any serious consideration of that, then we would need to be involved in those conversations and we would need to engage with council because of the sensitivities around that.
Yeah, that's great. And I hear that the port are coming to talk to us in a couple of weeks' time too, but a sort of informational briefing session, is that right?
That's right. And we have a special session, CCHL board special session with the port this Thursday. And I've spent a lot of time, Matt and I've spent a lot of time with the chair, Barry, and Graham, the chief executive, really trying to get a deeper understanding of the background to some of the industrial relations challenges and how the transformation program is progressing and how the current change proposal, which has been the subject of some ERA decisions, how that's all playing out. We think it's important that our full board gets a deeper appreciation of that, hence the session on Thursday. And following that, we think it's important that you as the councillors get a deeper appreciation of that. And there is quite a backstory to the current industrial relations environment at the port. And I think it's important to go back and understand where we've come from, understand therefore where we are at today and what we can all expect from here. So yeah, that's the intention.
That's great. And if we could make sure when the port comes as well, there's some concerns from the local hapu about environmental issues as well, around the potential enabling works that are kind of happening around a potential expansion at the port. So if we could have some information from the port when they come around any environmental assessments or things like that they've had done, that would be great as well. Thanks.
I can speak to that and can ask the port to cover that off in their presentation on the 15th, I think it is. But there are two very effective groups at the port that are that involve Ngāti Peki, and Ngāti Peki are very committed to those groups and very productive groups that are looking at harbour health. And there's been some reassurances gained from Ngāti Peki around that and the matter of the sensitivities around the reclamation in recent weeks, which we can report on. So on the 15th.
Okay. That's great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Celeste.
Just explain a bit more about the decarbonisation projects that have been funded. Is that in the report? I'm not sure if I could.
I can, in short, one is for ship to shore power. I understand that's for the fishing fleet. So it's more scope 3 emissions. The other is for the electric leach stacker. So again, it's sort of a transition area. So both of them are pretty pilot projects to test different technologies.
And I guess part of the process will be looking at getting government funding if it's available for other subs.
Absolutely. Where it's available, we can always try to access them.
Always.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yanni, did you have one?
Yeah, thank you. So I was just interested in your group group report, which I presume covers the companies, particularly on the intellectual, where you say one of the targets is a highly engaged workforce measured by staff engagement index. And I presume that's across the various companies, not just CCHL. Is that correct? What page is it?
Yes, that's correct.
So when will we be in a position to know what the staff engagement survey results are for each of the companies to know whether you're on target or not?
It's an end of year measure. So we would expect to be reporting that to you in the Q4 report. But I would call out in there are some engagement scores that are reflected in the strategic update to council, and some quite positive trends there too.
So I'm just trying to understand where, in terms of if LPC is found to be in breach of like the CEA, why that's not disclosed in this report. There's no mention of the LPC being in breach. And would you characterise?
I don't think LPC are in breach.
Right. So just to quote from the finding, this is from the ERA, I do find that the CEAs have been breached to the extent that the relationship between the unions and LPC is essentially defined as cooperative and collaborative, and such features have been notably absent in the manner by which the restructuring proposal has been developed and presented. It goes on to talk about not in accord with the wider good faith duty owed of the parties seeking to be active and constructive in maintaining, in establishing and maintaining a productive employment relationship. And I was concerned that the way that our report is portraying what happened from the ERA fails to take into account any accountability from LPC as to being found to be in breach. And I'm curious as to why. And
can you try and answer?
Yeah.
So I don't think I can answer that, for the reason that both the union and the company have appealed the ERA decision, and those appeals are pending. So it's not appropriate for me to make comment on that.
It would be better perhaps when LPC come and talk to us.
But
I think it's because they're subject to appeal. I don't think that we're in a position to discuss those.
That's actually an ongoing issue. So I think it's best that it's not discussed in the forum.
Public information. The findings are public,
which LPC and the union both dispute. That's why they're appealing.
So that's fine, but to characterise it like in our report, to characterise the issue being that MUNS and RMTU refuse to take.
Yanni, I'm going to stop it now because they are in dispute. So I'm not going to go any further.
I'm just
okay. Yanni, I'm stopping.
That's fine. So what I'm interested in is how do we get at what stage will we be able to get better measures around what's happening around industrial relations across our companies so that we know when things are working well and when things are working bad, particularly if we've had cases where things haven't gone so well, but yet in our quarterly report there's no mention of that.
There is mention of it in the report, but as I said, the company and the unions both are appealing those findings. In relation to the engagement survey results, they'll be reported to you.
Right. And so has there been any, I mean, I know you don't want to talk, I'm just curious if there's been any, as a result of the feedback we've given to the SOI, has there been any change of course around how we're dealing with our unions and our council companies in terms of CCHL?
There is a
other than appealing
engagement scores, reporting of engagement scores from the subsidiaries to CCHL and union. That's now in the SOI for next year.
I can't actually respond. That's not your question though, is it?
Well, I guess there's been concern that keeps getting raised around the industrial relations, as you're aware. And I'm just, I mean, when I hear, for example, that there's been an appeal, it seems like it's challenging it rather than trying to find constructive solutions to move forward. And I'm really keen, like I think for me, the worst outcome is ending up in industrial relations and conflict. The best solution is to try and work together. So I'm just keen to kind of know how we can have an assurance that that's kind of the approach rather than the confrontational legal approach.
Well, it's not the company that is necessarily taking that action. You know, it's a complex situation, and I think it's important that we have the full company.
I think I'd like to move on because this is actually quite a complicated situation and it can't be answered today, but you've taken on board and LBC will be coming back to us. No, we're moving on.
So just
there are others that want to ask questions, Yanni. You've spent quite a lot of time with them on questions. Tyrone?
Thank you. This might be a question for LPC as well, but I might as well ask it here. So obviously there's been the ARA decision, there's been the appeal. Have there been any tangible changes in the organisational structure of the LPC in the interim?
The change proposal that was the subject of the Employee Relations Authority findings has now been confirmed and is in the process of being implemented. Yep.
Thank you very much. Are there no other questions from the team? Now, Alana, my apologies for getting the name wrong with the lineup. I've got to get it better. So, but you are the head of impact. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah, great. Brian, thank you very much. And the team. So I'll put this. Yes, Kelly will second it. Thank you. I'll put it all in favour. Aye. Abstentions carried. Thank you very much. I will now move into PX, and you're here for this as well. Do I have a seconder for that? Victoria, thank you. I'll put that all in favour. Aye. Against? Abstentions carried. Now it's going to take a wee while, just say 5 minutes or so to change over. Certain procedures